Welcome back, everyone, to Montgomery County's Engage at Home, brought to you by the county's Caregiver Support Program. Our guest today is Pazit Aviv. She is one of my colleagues in the Area Agency on Aging. Pazit, welcome, and would you please introduce yourself?
Thank you, Lily. It's good to be with you. My name is Pazit Aviv. I am the village coordinator for Montgomery County. I've been doing this job for the past almost 6 years. Prior to that, I used to work for the Housing Opportunities Commission of Montgomery County, which provides affordable housing to the many county residents we have. My work as a village coordinator focuses on the community organizations that help people age at home using neighbor-to-neighbor approach, and I've been delighted to see the incredible growth of villages in the county since 2013-14 until now. We now have about close to 30 active villages in the county, and they have been doing incredible service for people, both aging individuals as well as younger, disabled, and some of them are even intergenerational. So I do all the kind of service and support villages need in order to start their operations, grow their operations, and sustain themselves, partnering with other nonprofits or county governments and forming coalitions to do a better job as a collective.
Thank you. We'll circle back onto villages a bit later in the interview, but I really would like you to share with our audience the work that you've been part of in response to some of the challenges associated with COVID-19 around food access.
Yes, the work around food access began as a product of the many conversations I've had with village leaders. All throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, we've had close contacts with village leadership from different parts of the county, and they have been sharing their observations of what's been happening in their communities, creating opportunities for each other to share ideas on best practices and safety policies, as well as just learn from me about what's happening in the bigger world of county government. And these conversations have been a vital source of information and input for us as providers so that we can then respond to issues that they bring. And in the very early conversations, people were talking about the fact that many of their members being older, and originally, if you remember, just being old meant that you were at a risk group. And so people were discouraged from leaving their homes, and there's so much, not just disinformation, but just lack of understanding of how this pandemic works, that people prefer to completely isolate themselves and quarantine essentially. And as a result, we're unable to go to the grocery store. Even a short trip to the store became such a risk-filled endeavor that many felt they were unable to do that. Those who relied on volunteers who were themselves older, and we found that the volunteers don't feel comfortable going to the grocery store with them as well. So even though many of the village members did not experience loss of income, they definitely experienced loss of access to food resources. And that had started me on the path of looking into other issues of food access. And as you can imagine, the economic devastation that we've been experiencing also created tremendous pressure around food insecurity overall. People just can't afford to buy food. And if you compound that with a situation where somebody might have lost their income and then got COVID-19, unable to get out of the house and can't afford to buy anything, that can create very desperate situations. So in collaboration with many county departments, just to name a few, the Office of Emergency Management, 311, HHS, Community Action Agency, the Gilchrist Center, Gilchrist Immigrant Resource Center, and many others, Department of Technology Services that gave us the necessary platform to do this. We actually started a call center where people who are interested in finding where they can access food can call. You start out by calling 311. you make a request to talk to people from the food access call center, and then the staff is trained to understand the unique situation a caller might be in, whether it be a family with school-age kids, or a senior citizen, or family with COVID, or loss of income, so disabilities. There's all these complexities, and as well as where they live in the county. And staff then creates a list of food resources this person with family could access. If you, for example, have the money, but you need a way of getting to the grocery store, staff will have a list of potential services and resources you could access. If you can't afford to buy food but can drive yourself to a food pantry, staff will give you the relevant resources. If you cannot drive, we also have additional providers who can do that to you. And I can say that only thanks to the incredible, amazing work of so many food providers in the county who rallied around this need and created many, many new programs, new services, and augmented what they were offering, we wouldn't have much to offer in the way of resources. So the county, both as a government organization, but also as many, many, many nonprofit and just ordinary volunteers, have come together to create as many solutions as possible, so that when somebody calls or somebody needs information, we have places to refer them to and explain to them how to access. It's been incredibly challenging for staff, because most of the people who answer the calls are not social workers, and still they have conversations with people in quite complicated and desperate situations. And so staff has been spending a lot of time taking care of the people they call, to provide them comfort, as well as lean on each other when they're dealing with this emotional burden of having to serve so many people in need. Yeah, recently we've also expanded our support to HHS around rental assistance information. So we also help provide facts on evictions, how to access rental assistance, and screen some of those people.
And is 311 still that main portal that we're encouraging people to call?
Correct. 311 is dealing with tremendous overload, because as you can imagine, so much is going on, and the system was not set up for so much need, and they are constantly adding new staff and increasing their technology capacity. So if you call 311, it's important that you're patient. They are really doing their best, but still you might find yourself waiting for a long time. Sometimes people just give up and they hang up on the phone. Just if you really need to get with the county, call 311, put that phone on speaker and go about your business. Do not give up, so that you will be able to access the services or information you need. The county is trying to figure out additional ways to give people access to resources and information. It's a little too preliminary to talk about. Maybe when that's out, we can do a video on those new resources to people. But I mean, until we have a better solution, please don't give up and stay with 311, because once you call, they have an obligation to serve you. There's a service request record with a timeline associated to that, so that you will get a resolution for your call.
Excellent. And I know that all this information is also online. I'm going to publish that website address in the description. So for people who are wanting more information, they may not be ready to call 311 yet, but they may want to learn more about it. We'll have that description in the episode where you found this. I think the piece that I have gained a lot from hearing from you talk about all these new initiatives is that we want people to know that there are such a range of partners thinking about different angles. So it's like you said, it's not just for people who can't afford. It may be that the people can afford, but they're not eating because they actually don't know how to problem solve, how to get food into the house.
And another thing, I think that when we talk about food, many of the people who are listening right now might be in a position where they can donate food or can offer a ride. So if you are listening to this and you don't feel like you're the one who are in need and want to call 311 for information, there are many meaningful volunteer opportunities posted on the Volunteer Center. They created a COVID-19 specific page where they elevate those opportunities that are for the emergency response, for the here and now, and the crisis we're dealing as a community. And there's all kinds of ways you can contribute. My daughter, for example, she loves baking, and there's a group that offers free birthday cakes for people who are in need. And so we, our kitchen is going to be, a factory line for birthday cakes, and it gives people a sense of connectedness and purpose beyond just being stuck at home. So go online or call the volunteer center to find ways where you can engage and be a part of whatever is happening in the world.
Well put. And I'm going to put the link to the volunteer center too. You just really tapped onto something that we want people to stay connected. We want people to stay feeling mentally fit, physically fit, and volunteering. If you aren't ill and you have the capacity, the county has resources to be able to connect you to all the different sort of opportunities, whether it's around food, whether it could be around other activities, but you really tapped onto that. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's important to remember that most nonprofits had given plenty of thoughts to engaging volunteers in a safe way during the pandemic. So you should not assume that everything is risky, that you should look into particular opportunities, call up the organization, understand what their policy practices are, and so see where your risk tolerance is or ability to do something, whether it is maybe just from home. Maybe it is contactless volunteers. The cake situation I'm telling you about, we make the cake at home, we drop it off without any contact with the coordinators who then ship it to different places. And so we could still be a part of something without having any exposure. I'm just saying this as an example because there are so many things you can do, even if you don't want to leave your house.
Exactly. So thank you for that. Before we start talking about villages, you mentioned something about rental assistance. Do you want to give us a little bit more information about that?
There are many people, I'm talking perhaps 40% of renters in this county, who are dealing with inability to pay rent. This is just estimates. And there are a couple of things people need to know if they're in a situation or if they know somebody who is unable to pay rent. The first one is that there are current moratoriums on certain evictions, that it's important to call again 311 to get all the information, because knowledge is power. The eviction process is a long and complex one, and tenants have rights. And so maybe we should have another episode just about how to manage a housing crisis. If you have one, what are the resources at your disposal and how you can protect yourself. But it's just important for now to know that the county has many resources in terms of information to tenants and landlords about how to deal with complex situations like that, as well as remember that the county has funds for rental assistance. It's currently somewhat of a waitlist situation because so many people are calling and the staff is currently processing requests. But it's always good to call 311 again if you have a situation you need help with. If you are in the process of eviction, not afraid about eviction, but if you are in imminent danger of eviction, there are legal aid services for you, there are housing counselor, and more important than anything else is we have eviction prevention services in the county. So if you or anybody know are dealing with an eviction process, please call 311 and say, I am dealing with eviction. And so your case will be expedited. but only say that if you really are in the process of eviction, so that we don't clog up this emergency system.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. So I think this would be a good chance that we now pivot to pre-COVID. What was your 100%, maybe not 100, but it was definitely a big percentage of your work, villages. You gave a nice overview about what villages are for those that don't know about. Why don't you tell us a bit more about villages and maybe what's happening for villages during this time, and maybe if there's something that the average viewer could be inspired by?
Villages, well, before COVID, villages spent a lot of time thinking about what better services they can offer their members, how many new programs they can do, different ideas on how to sustain their own leadership and volunteer corps, and essentially being bigger and better. When COVID hit, I think that put a wrench into a lot of their operations, because community is at the heart of what villages do. They rely on each other for volunteer help. They come together for social activities, large and small, and it's about building those local, hyper personalized connections that set them apart, that made them what they were, which is essentially a community. And so if you can no longer meet in person, how do you sustain that sense of community? And that's been at the focus of many of our conversations since COVID. Many of the villages successfully pivoted to offer online opportunities for social activities. And some of them are super small, like 5 people coming together to have virtual tea and just checking in, or offering presentations on different topics. The villages right now are super collaborative, and if one organizes a nice presentation by a speaker, let's say about the Electoral College and the history of this institution, then they share their Zoom link with other villages so that members could join from all parts of the county and indeed the country, because once you're online, you can have people join your event from Australia. It's
completely,
other than the time lag, what's to hold you back? Right?
Yeah, getting up at 2 in the morning. Yay!
To talk about the Electoral College. And the ability to be flexible and nimble has always been a trait of many villages, and they have demonstrated their willingness to do that and to adapt. The two challenges that we're seeing are around individuals who are not online.
Yeah.
And that's something that many individuals and providers and institutions are wondering what to do about, because if you're online, you can sit in your home and listen to Lily and I chat about all kinds of things. But if you are not, never have been, we have lost a very important segment of our population, and we just have very limited ways of getting in touch with people.
Absolutely.
So that's a huge concern for villages, because some of their members are online, and some benefits of being online is if you were an individual with disabilities or there was some caregiving issue that held you back and you were unable to participate in person, you were kind of excluded from those in-person meetings. But now everybody's at home and everybody's joining on an equal footing. So they are seeing an increase in participation by those who have not been able to be in-person participants before. So that's a good thing. Again, when you don't have the online access, it's an issue. And the most important challenge we're dealing with is how do we get volunteers to feel comfortable to offer services to members and have members feel comfortable calling for help, because everybody is so concerned about the risk of catching COVID-19 that they've essentially put their lives on hold. And you can only do that so far, especially when there are ongoing chronic health conditions you need to take care of, postponing your doctor's visits or other wellness checkups or just routine physical therapy. At some point we'll catch up with people. So people need to go out. People need to engage and be a part of society in a safe way. So finding volunteers who'd be willing to do that and creating good practices around keeping people safe is prime on our mind. And I think we're making some headway in that. Again, if people are listening and watching and want to do something, find out where your local village is. There is an interactive map on the county website for villages. You can,
which I will put a link to.
thank you. There's an interactive map where you can put your address and it will tell you about your nearest village. If you want to volunteer, you don't need to be within the area of any one particular villages. Most of them accept volunteers from anywhere. So if you want to get your younger family members involved or do something for other people in the community, that's a great way to do that. So
it's really amazing the work that you have done, but also the work that our communities have done to step up and create these villages. Now, there's a project that I know you've been working on for some time, and it's around home sharing. Pazit, would you give our audience a little bit of an update of what's happening with that?
yes, so the idea of sharing your home is definitely not a new one. When you look, we were looking at the history of home sharing in this country, and in fact, they used to be called borders, and people in the teens, 20s, and 30s had definitely shared homes with people who were non-family members. And the movement of home share had been around in this country, so its modern version for the past at least 20, 30 years in different large cities in the country. And the basic concept is to create opportunities in a safe way to pair up older or just homeowners who have larger homes and their needs with individuals who are looking for rooms to rent. So this is not just a regular landlord-tenant situation, but in fact a sharing of the same dwelling, which means that the relationship needs to be taken into account. This is not just an ordinary contract, but building some kind of a cohabitation agreement. The benefits of home sharing are many, many, and it's been proved to be a benefit to the homeowner who might feel like it's nice to have another human being in this house, so it's not just you, as well as creating a modest revenue source for the homeowner by renting an apartment, a room. You can then have some extra money every month. Usually those room rentals are more affordable than the regular market rate for rentals, so that people who are struggling financially can find more affordable rents. And in some situations, if the older homeowner or the person with disability needs some help around the house, you can then negotiate some of the rent in lieu of in-kind support around the house. So the benefits, it's very flexible and has great potential for building relationship, creating financial security, and help with some in-home supports. It really depends on the pairing that takes place. So the county had decided to pilot this project for the matching of landlords and tenants, home share and home seeker, homeowners and home seeker. And we have contracted with a local nonprofit called Housing Initiative Partnerships. They would be the lead on this, and they can also come to one of your videos and tell you more when the program is actually launched, because we're about to start developing the basic concept of the program. And I'm really excited about that. And many people that have heard about that concept call me and ask, when is this starting? Because we really like this concept and think it's a fabulous way for people to both create some financial security, prevent isolation, and do something good for other people. So I'm really excited about that.
Oh, excellent. And definitely let's get those folk on when when it's up and running, because we know that there are many people in both sides. The folk with the house, that they're there by themselves, and then there's the folk who would love to live in a shared home environment, but it's how do you make that happen? So it's a great initiative. So we have come to the end of our interview. It's been great having you here. What closing thoughts do you have for our audience?
I want to circle back to some of the things that I mentioned around engagement. Um, this pandemic created conditions that are very favorable for what I call the cocooning. It's so
Mhm.
easy to just minimize your life to very, very narrow scope, to avoid contacts, to avoid engaging, to not be a part of whatever is going on because it's scary. I'm not saying it isn't.
Mhm.
I just want to remind people that we as humans need to be connected, need to be engaged. We don't do well as atomized beings, even if there's one person in the house. So whatever way you can to find a way to engage, whether it is through reaching out and asking for help, you'd be surprised how many people out there would feel honored by you reaching out and asking for help, or offering your own help. And these things are not mutually exclusive. And
Mhm.
there's so many opportunities. Lily, you've done so many wonderful videos on online resources, things people can do for entertainment and arts and learning and connecting with other people who share your experiences, as well as
Absolutely.
volunteer. Go on the website, find out
Exactly.
who needs you, because we all need each other. That's the greatest truth. We are so interdependent with one another that we can't let that um, fear of the pandemic drive us apart. So that's my part.
Absolutely. And even if it's just the good old telephone, that,
Yes.
go through your telephone list and, give people a buzz. It doesn't have to be a 3-hour conversation. I often say that connecting with other people is like opening up a window and having the breath of fresh air coming in. That it's amazing how just a little bit of just simple human interaction, and particularly positive human interaction, can be so beneficial.
Yeah.
And I agree. I think that idea of, it could be folk you haven't spoken to for a long time. And, as long as you don't get on the phone and not get off, people are going to be happy to have you call them and maybe even invite you to call again.
Yeah, do it that way.
Yeah.
I mean, even the chance to talk to you today, Lily, has been such a wonderful way of not being stuck in my own little room, but connecting. That's what we did just
Yeah,
now.
exactly. Exactly. And, there's a lot of programs that were already in place that have blossomed
Yep.
because they were able to pivot easy because they were already doing it. But then there's other folk who are just stepping up and saying, we believe in connecting with people, we believe in social engagement. This is a compromise, but we're going to make it happen.
Yep. And also one more thing, because I think it's also important when you are done watching this video, ask yourself who of your neighbors could really use a little check-in, because
Exactly.
people really like it when their neighbors are neighborly, not nosy.
Yeah.
Be careful,
Yeah.
but just a friendly check-in to see how people are doing. You could be that lifesaver to them.
Yeah. Exactly. I had a lot of flowers in the garden and I picked them all, and social distantly, I went around and left a little sort of posy on a whole lot of neighbours' place. I didn't even leave a note. I didn't even think about it actually. And gradually I ran into people and they kind of recognized the flowers in my garden and they said, was that you who left those? And it
Yeah.
was. And, we all were talking like 10 feet away from each other, masked
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
But it was a nice way of doing, it's kind of like that idea of what you were encouraging is folk to consider volunteering, is that it's not about, we get benefit, but we're also doing something for other people.
Yep.
And that's a good feeling. So thank you again, Pazit. I wish you and your family well.
Same to
And
you.
you have been watching Engage at Home, brought to you by the county's Caregiver Support Program. I want to remind you to all stay healthy and calm.